So welcome very much to this wonderful press briefing here in Slovenia. I'm very honored to be here today in Slovenia, and I would like to welcome you very much. I have now the following message. I'm here to call Slovenia to support Austria and Kosovo and Bosnia and Ukraine and the European Union in NATO. So what I want to achieve is very clear. I want to achieve the following. I want that Slovenia, please, as a NATO member, that you actively support the NATO integration of Austria and the completion of Western integration, which we started very successfully in '95. But we have not been completing this NATO integration because of many problems. The Social Democrats have blocked NATO membership in the '90s, and now the nationalists, the same nationalists who, by the way, are so much insulting Slovenia during the election campaign, which led to this diplomatic incident. And I would like here at the beginning of my press briefing to apologize. I'm profoundly sorry for what was happening. And I call actually Slovenia a role model for Austria, because you're in NATO already. You're a much more pro-Western country. You really support Ukraine. You send tanks. You support the training mission. This is exactly what a modern European country should do in this crisis in the war of 2022 and 3. This is good. Slovenia is a role model, and we should be all very proud that Slovenia is so well integrated. It came from the rubble of Yugoslavia, it broke away, it got its freedom, and it's now fully integrated in the Western world. This is a big success. We should be proud and not use it as a derogative term in the Austrian elections in Carinthia. Also, our bilateral cooperation is very good and should be improved, and we should be proud to have Slovenia, such a successful country, as our neighbor. I will talk more about that one. But first along, my campaign, what I'm personally doing. I have initiated 3 different people's petitions in Austria. Austria to join NATO, then Austria also to open the labor market of Austria towards all EU candidate countries. And this is very important. We need now to be more open and to allow the Ukrainians to stay and work permanently at the Austrian labor market and also at the Slovenian labor market. I don't know the exact situation here, but in Austria we only have year-to-year improvements, and that's of course not enough. We need to do that on a regular, permanent basis and give this openness towards the Ukrainians, and of course also to the people of the Western Balkans and to Moldova and to Georgia. We need to build a EU of 37 member states, which is attractive as well for the United Kingdom one day to return. And this is exactly the agenda I pursue now in Austria after my return from my work in Ukraine and in Kosovo. And this is what I'm doing as the chairman of the Austrian Committee for NATO membership of Kosovo, Bosnia, Austria, Ukraine, and the European Union. Yes, the European Union, because the logic is that we change the things which were leading to Brexit. And of course, the one thing is this kind of strategic autonomy of the French. That's evil. Nobody wants to be independent of America. It is totally ridiculous, because we see America is the essential security provider now in the war in Ukraine. And we need a much closer partnership. And the logic of me as a European federalist is the membership of the EU in NATO. And then we have this future ahead of us where we are much more united. And of course, then we have the free trade agreement with America, and we then are able to make the UK a better offer. And that is what we should do. That's what I'm promoting. And I call the Slovenian for support of exactly this agenda. Austrian-Slovenian relations, I call for support for Austria and Slovenia NATO membership. As a NATO member, you are also, your ambassador in Vienna is the appointment of NATO in Austria, and he is very reluctant to engage and to be actively supporting NATO membership, because obviously there is a big immorality in neutrality, because we basically now ask the Slovaks and the Slovenians, the Hungarians, our neighboring countries, to carry most of our defense for themselves. So like in the monarchy, the German-speaking people of this region are happy to allow the Slovenians and Croatians and Slovaks to die for them. and they are sitting in Vienna and saying, yeah, we are neutral. This is exactly a continuous kind of historic precedent in a line, and that's really very wrong. We should also support the European defense, and European defense means NATO, and I reject the idea of an individual kind of level of whatever the neos, the liberals in Austria say the EU should have a defense dimension. Yes, it can be to some extent, but the reality is NATO, and there is no third way, no Yugoslavian perspective of the European Union, no kind of Tito-esque bloc-free kind of style of scenario. No. There is no French way as well. We have the European Union, and this should join as a union the defense alliance which exists, and that's NATO. And we should also then have Kosovo and Bosnia inside, and Serbia, by the way, must be isolated. The recent result of the Monday discussions in Brussels has shown that Serbia is not ready to sign for peace, and it has to be isolated now. And the Western integration of Austria, of Kosovo, of Bosnia must be enhanced and must be faster. And I call for Slovenia to support here as well very clearly. I call this my Westwende tour. Zeitenwende means Westwende. Westwende, the turn to the west, this German word which 1 year ago the German Chancellor has started to use, and it's a very important word, but unfortunately Austria missed the Zeitenwende in the first war year. We have quite a tragic balance, because we have 1 year of war, we have a complete failure of Austria in the 5 central sectors of the Zeitenwende. That means Austria has, contrary to Finland and Sweden, not joined NATO and not even started a discussion about it, because we have not a real developed democracy, because the Chancellor has started no, and then all the parties have said no. And that's it at the moment. And we are gradually trying to save the debate, and it would be very good if Slovenia supports that. Secondly, in the Zeitenwende in the trade policy, because Austria is the most protectionist country here in the region, and we have been very loud against the Canadian agreement. Now finally that's ratified and proven so successful. We need also an agreement with the United States of America, with Mercosur. This must be ratified now. And this is not the idea to build some kind of alpine fortress of green pastures against everybody else, but to stabilize the global economic system with better relations with the friends from North and South America. This is the logic of opening the European continent away from Russia, the hostile state, towards our friendly partners in the Western world and hemisphere, and of course also to ASEAN and to African Union, to Australia, and this is very important. Opening the Austrian labor market is also very important at the moment, because we have been, Austria as the most reluctant country to give the EU candidate status to Ukraine, but we need also to make it very clear that we have the one power Austria has is not the European policy, but of course the labor market. And in the labor market we have now so many Ukrainians which we give year-to-year permits, and we could give them permanently. And out of justice and also economics and also European principle, we should give that to all EU candidate countries, and that would be much better. We need also Zeitenwende in energy. In Austria we failed completely. We have this contract of submission with Gazprom, which now the Austrian Minister of Energy wants to know all the details. So bad it is. And there's a secretive contract with Russia for 22 years for 7 billion, take or pay. And this is the reality, and we have to break this contract, and then Russia can see where they go. And we have to, of course, westernize our energy supplies, and together with Slovenia, we need also a return to a different approach towards energy policy. Maybe we can also get shares in some part of the Gruško nuclear power plant, because we definitely need also to end our kind of nuclear phobia in Austria. This is also completely anti-scientific, and we need also to work together to supply efficiently American and other LNG from Croatia towards the south of Austria, to work better with Germany and with America and integrate our energy politics, and to completely cut off all Russian oil and gas and trade by the end of 2023. and the Austrian companies, but also the Slovenian companies. I don't know if you're very engaged in Russia, but Austria is, and it will be all a financial disaster. We have to compensate the Austrian companies and to nationalize what is to be nationalized, and to tell them to leave where they can leave. And of course it's a big loss, and of course it will raise the budget, the debt ceiling again, but we have to face the facts that there will be no cooperation with Russia. There will be no back to normal pre-2022. We are basically at the state of war, and we have to act like this. That's the Zeitenwende in energy and also in FDI. And then this submissive Austrian policy, which has now resulted in this 18 MEPs to be invited to the OECD, it has to end as well. And we need also here a new approach, no longer Austria as a spy center, and no longer this kind of submissive attitude towards dictatorships. We need to change this. Reasons for the disaster, contrary to Slovenia, Austria is the total disaster because of the neutrality myth, because of our fake identity narrative to build everything on neutrality. As a kind, we are different than the rest of the West. We are like more closer to peace. We are the bridge to Moscow and all these things. It was never true, because also in 1955 we wanted to get rid of the Soviets and had accepted necessarily the neutrality. It was not a choice. It was the only way to get rid of the Soviets, and we wanted to be a Western country. But then later we have developed this kind of in between Northern Yugoslavia and T2S kind of third way philosophy in the 70s. And then it became some kind of narrative why we are different to the Germans, why we are different to Slovenia, why we are special in the center of the Europe. And then this arrogance, which has been connected with our past and future, regrettable, is also then leading to this kind of third way, which Austria is always proposing. And that's very regrettable. We should be just a normal European member state like the other 26 and hopefully 37 in the future. Then we have a lot of dumb provincial protectionism. That's very sad. And we have here the reality of all these countries to be, this kind of anti-Mercosur populism and this anti-TTIP, anti-Americanism. We have left and right-wing virulent anti-Americanism, very regrettable. We have anti-capitalism, anti-Semitisms everywhere in the Austrian society, still to this day, and this is very regrettable. And we have a xenophobic hate of migrants and Eastern Europeans and unfortunately Slovenians. Yeah? We have just seen it popping up again with this latest scandal in the regional election campaign, where they said afraid of Sloveniazation. I mean, we should be very proud to be closer to Slovenia because it's a very successful country. I will talk about that one as well. We have also a strong anti-EU populism in the media and this highly concentrated media landscape, and also the lack of EU information. Still, we are rather new EU member state, and we have been unfortunately not very successful in educating the population about the benefits of European unification. Then Russian influence buying via the energy import contracts is huge in Austria. We have especially Wolfgang Schüssel, but many of our former politicians, they always go into Russian services. Now they have quit it officially, but the links are still there. And of course, the commissions have been paid for these huge contracts. I'm talking about the 22-year contract with 7 billion of volume yearly. So we are talking about 150 billion volume contract. So this is the biggest contract in Austrian economic history. And of course, people get commissions for such contracts, and cui bono. We should be very clear on that one. And then a lot of influence buying can be funded by such commissions. Left-wing nostalgia. We have, unfortunately, with Heinz Fischer, the former state president, a very big fan of the Soviet Union in power, still on the left. And we have right-wing adulation of Putin, especially with the friends of Putin in Austria, the FPÖ, a very problematic party, funded by Putin with an official friendship contract with the United Russia Party. Then we have for today, I would like to also call for support in Slovenia, because Slovenianization of Austria is a really very good idea, actually, because you have achieved a role model status, because you joined NATO already. You have even a NATO training center in the Alps. This is very good. Congratulations. Slovenia is a role model for Austrian-Ukraine policy. You send tanks, you send weapons, you really support when it's needed. This is what the country should do. And also you are very good in the Balkans. You are investing in the Balkans much more than Austria. You are very competent. You understand the true nature of Serbian aggression in the 90s, obviously. And also now, Austria should not have this kind of turn to Serbia, which is deeply problematic. And also as a role model in EU trade policy, because we should not build alpine fortresses, but really have a trade policy for 450 million people, which is a pillar of global economic stability and of regulatory success worldwide of the EU. We should be proud about it, explain that better, and Slovenia here is a role model. Austria is absolutely zero. Slovenia hero. And also in energy politics, this 30 years of annoying Slovenia against the Krško nuclear power plant has to stop. We need, of course, to Europeanize our nuclear sector. We need to have European nuclear power. We need to ban all Russian supply and all Russian uranium, and Rosatom must be sanctioned by the European Union. But of course, we need also then to support nuclear power. Maybe we can have a closer cooperation for the Krško power plant, which you share with Croatia. Why not to share it with Austria as well and build a new block? And all these things are really very possible and very good. And Slovenia, a role model in energy politics, and Austria, again, very negative role model. So Slovenianization is very good. Let's be more like Slovenia. And obviously also in the EU and in the US policy, you at least don't have these megalomaniac tendencies of the Austrian politicians to block and veto EU decisions in the trade policy. And you are not constantly on the weaker side on the sanction debate like Mr. Schallenberg, who is so close to Russia. Yes, when it comes to the European Regional Statistical Yearbook, I have also made the effort to see where Slovenia stands. Western Slovenia has caught up with Corinthia, with Koroška. It's a big success. It's at 106, and Corinthia is at 108% of purchasing power comparity. That's very good. Congratulations. Eastern Slovenia is closer to Burgenland. Burgenland is still a bit richer. Eastern Slovenia has to catch up. So you need also more federalism, more regional development, absolutely. But given that you lost so many years in the bunker of Yugoslavia and in the prison of nations, and now you have recovered in 30 years to be the most successful of the 13 new states, congratulations. We should be very proud. Slovenia has since 95, since the end of the Balkan Wars in the north, you have, since Dayton Agreement, you have tripled your GDP from 10 to 30,000. And Austria has basically had about 30,000 back then. And we have now 53,000. So we have not even doubled our GDP. We could have been much more successful. Slovenia as well. You know, many things could have happened, but we have not achieved it. Because of what? Because of populism, xenophobia, high taxation, and of course anti-Western attitude also in the Austrian economic politics, unfortunately. Here I have drafted the chart of the countries which I think should be very fast-track in the European Union. This is of course Kosovo, in NATO, and this is the NATO membership. I call it the Vilnius 4 group for NATO, because it's Ukraine. Stoltenberg has now made very clearly long-term, you know, we're all dead, Mr. Kane said. We need to be short-term in NATO, and for Ukraine, this is the only way for victory. And also Kosovo, Bosnia, obviously there's a huge majority in both countries in favor of NATO membership, and they must be protected from Serbian aggression. And obviously Austria as well. So these are the 4 next countries, and this is very important to have that happening. Then I'm calling for Austrian tanks for the EU candidate Ukraine. Our neutrality is serving only Russia, and we have to stop neutrality. I always raise the NATO flag at events now in Austria because I feel also emotionally attached towards Ukraine. I lived there for years. And they are fighting now for their life, and we are doing so little. And I have been at this event at Diplomatic Academy raising the NATO flag. And I criticize always our Chancellor, Mr. Nehammer, because he met with Mr. Klitschko doing this man's friendship. And in reality, he is delivering nothing. I applaud Slovenia that you delivered in your tanks and other military equipment, and you should do much more. I call now Austria has also increased the budget. That was good in defense, but nobody is attacking Austria. So it's a completely waste of money. And now we even waste it because we have over 170 armed vehicles from the past, from the Cold War. And we are now renovating them. Well, that's good, maybe, but we are renovating them for 570 million euros, and that's completely waste of money. We should transfer all these tanks towards Ukraine so they can liberate Mariupol this year. We can buy new tanks, real modern tanks, 21st century tanks. Not so many, because with Ukraine's victory, we anyhow don't need, there will be no Russian army anymore, because Ukraine will be our shield in Europe. And so let's send the old tanks to Ukraine now so they can liberate Mariupol, and then we integrate Ukraine in NATO and Austria as well, Kosovo and Bosnia. A much better strategy than wasting taxpayers' money with renovating these old tanks. And then what we wait with them for we anyhow not even do the training mission. You know, if at least with these tanks we would train the Ukrainian officers and tank commander crews, but even that we don't do because Orban has intervened together with Croatia. Austria is out of this training mission because of Orban's pressure and his influence buying in Austria, and that's very disgraceful. He is the shame of Europe, and Austria is coming close to it. So, but Austria has one big progress. Like all Eastern European reform states, now the Americans have started with a mission from the Vermont National Guards. They have started to sign a partnership with the Austrian military, and that's very good. So there will be F-45 in Zeltweg. We have this military airport there. That's actually a very good military airport for a Central European Air Defense Command in the future, when we all have F-45 and we will all be in NATO and we can share the airspace over Austrian or Central Europe with one central command. I think Zeltweg would be one option for that, because I'm confident that Austria will join NATO and we have to complete our integration. I have here a picture of Alois Mock. If he would have been president in '92, we will be anyhow in NATO already. But he was sick and then he died, and so we are basically left by his successors who were treasonable then cooperating with Russia, unfortunately, and we need Western integration to be completed by NATO membership, and that's the logic of our Central European countries. We are all united. So I do a lot of campaigning, I collect signatures for that. I was invited to TV shows and I'm publishing op-eds for that one. This was my first tour now in October, November, and this is the part where I will talk about NATO. Then about trade, because Western integration needs also trade opening. I repeat, we have now 100 trillion economy globally. That is enormous success from the 22 trillion we had in 1990 at the end of Yugoslavia and the Soviet Union, the victory in the Cold War. We have now a population of 8 billion, up from 5.5. We have really tremendously worked and developed 30 very successful years. And especially the 100 million people which joined the European Union, like Slovenia, in the last 20 years, this was really very successful. And congratulations, especially Romania, Bulgaria, big success. And we can be very proud this globalization works. And in recent years, globalization got, by the pressure of the left, a bad name. That is very unfortunate, and we have to return. This is a very important map. It's the EU trade map. We have now trade agreements with half of the world, and the rest is blocked by Austria and by the French, obviously. And that's very tragic. So we need a list, and that's why I make this people's petition in Austria. We need a list of 10 FTAs, like Australia, New Zealand, African Union, the Philippines, Indonesia, and of course Mercosur and India, Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan. We need the remaining 10, 12 countries or regions, economic areas, which we need to conclude free trade agreements, and I'm confident we will do that. And that's of course extremely important to do that very fast in order to open us to the world and to have economic stability in this war situation, and also to enable complete decoupling from Russia by the end of 2023. And so especially the most important and most controversial and most lack of understanding I have for that one is that we, despite being so closely integrated with NATO, we don't have a free trade agreement with America. That's of course very unfortunate, and we should definitely have that, and I'm calling for that. And I'm confident we will do that, and it will be very beneficial for the Western world, for everybody in the world to have it. Now the preparations are coming up, and a lot of things are happening on that one already with the Trade and Technology Council, but there needs to be better public support, and Central European Alpine countries should not block that because we have also responsibility, because that's a huge important effort. America has liberated us from the Nazis, let's not forget, has reconstructed us with the Marshall Fund, has helped us to contain the Soviets and contained the Soviets threat for over 40 years, has then managed to liberate in the victory all these countries, and has helped, of course, on the positive side in the Yugoslavian wars with the liberation of Bosnia and Kosovo, and of course the recognition of the countries late but though, or like Slovenia and Croatia, and of course now in the Ukraine war again, America the essential nation. But we should also be open towards Latin America, and here I criticize the Austrian government heavily because they have, after Lula, the center-left-wing president of Brazil, came to power, the populists were defeated, the Russian-backed populist Bolsonaro, and then Lula came, and then Austrian Vice Chancellor Kogler has called for continuous resistance against Mercosur. I mean, we have a responsibility for the world. We should absolutely get Brazil into OECD. Slovenia as a member of OECD can also support that. And of course, to have the free trade agreement ratified is very important. And all these issues like labor, environmental and Amazonas, they are the only way to have improvement there is via having such an agreement where we then have influence and leverage in Brazil, as well as it has shown in so many of these beneficial fair and free trade agreements which the EU is concluding, because all these things are in there. And that's why I have this people's petition to have asking the Austrian to have support the EU trade policy with FTAs with ASEAN, Mercosur, African Union, Gulf Cooperation Council, Australia, India, Uzbekistan. This is so important. It should be part of our turn to the West, Westwende, and that's my people's petition, membership of NATO and all this, and embargo of Russia for July 23, no trade with Russia, it's an enemy state, and the integration of Ukraine into the EU and NATO. That's very clear here, my people's petition. Please, if you have friends in Austria, you must be Austrian citizen to sign, but I'm sure there is a lot of people in Slovenia with friends in Austria, and please call them to sign exactly this petition. Thanks a lot. Then we need to decouple from Russian energy. In the EU, that has impressively happened. Germany is at zero now. Austria is a zero, Germany hero. And we have Germany really zero gas, zero coal, zero oil. Very good. Austria is again at 71 import of Russia in gas. We have decreased a bit our general consumption level, but we are, in terms of supplies, in December 22 was a big scandal. We are now back, because why? Because of the take or pay agreement, because the Austrian government doesn't want to break that agreement because they need to compensate OMV then for the losses, and that's a huge financial loss. And so they better continue to buy from Russia and wait until there will be a decision of force majeure because of the war by the EU, which Austria, on the other hand, is blocking. So the only way to really get out of this reasonable well is to have EU sanctions against Russia in the gas, and that's what I'm calling for. Also in the uranium, obviously. And Austria should nationalize its gas supply sector and then sell the Austrian state company OMV, we have 31%, and sell it to Norway, a NATO member with the financial capacity to lift the enormous resources of the Romanian Black Sea, which Austria artificially has not lifted purposefully in order to keep Russian gas flowing. That was the strategy of Mr. Schüssel. They changed even the leadership of the OMV to have a compliant CEO to be serving Russia and paying a disservice to Romania, where Austria has the monopoly port called Petrom. This is a major scandal as well. Yes, we should have no trade with the enemy. Russia is the enemy, and we should boycott Russia completely by end 2023. I call in the Austrian media time for the boycott and isolation of Russia. 1 year ago already, it's not working. And here I have collected the most iconic pro-Russian serving pictures. Maybe you can see it. The famous picture of Schüssel, our former chancellor, and the boss of Putin in Vienna, with Putin here in the skiing. They have this ski partnership, and then the wedding of Mrs. Kneißl, and then the famous visit of shame in 2014 during the war. Putin has this dictator visit in the Chamber of Commerce. Then, of course, the big signing of the gas submission contract in 2018. And of course, Karl Nehammer going to Moscow during the war in April 2022 as the only EU trade. And there's many of these pictures. You know, Austria is completely with Russia for 23 years now, and Mr. Schüssel and many others are responsible for that. Yes, and now come to the dimension of the European Union. We have here the 37 member states. And that's very important to have this clear yes to the EU in terms of, I just have to switch off one of these. And we have here the situation. We have 37 member states and in the future, and we should be very much pro that. And we should, of course, support all these countries. And I have drafted a list from Moldova, Georgia to others. Yeah. And the point is here to open the Austrian labor market. That's why I say Montenegro goes Europe. That's my association to promote Montenegro's EU membership. And I have called many times now in the public to open the Austrian labor market for all Europeans. There is no logic to keep that closed. And we have a huge problem with the supply of labor anyhow. And we should treat countries which in the future are in the European Union much better. And that's why I call Albania, Ukraine, Kosovo, Georgia, Moldova, Montenegro, Macedonia, Bosnia, and even Serbia, if they recognize Kosovo, to be open, allowed on the Austrian labor market, and I hope as well on the Slovenian labor market. This kind of xenophobic protectionism against Europeans is completely wrong, and it's anyhow people who one day will be voters in the European Union. Why to wait 20 years? Why to lose a generation again? It was totally beneficial now to have the European Union, including Romania, Bulgaria, Slovenia, Hungary. You know, this racism of Austria against Eastern Europeans has to come to a stop, and it's very important. Unfortunately, the counter forces are strong. We have Orban, who is paid by Putin to work with Vučić and with Nehammer. He has now a big success in November. He has built this triple axis here in Central Europe with Croatia partly involved. And they have then turned around Austria to veto Schengen for Romania and Bulgaria. Why that was important? Obviously, more unity matters in the war, and they have achieved less unity. So they have undermined European solidarity and harmed Europe very much in Romania and Bulgaria. It is also the flow of weapons from Bulgaria, Turkey, and towards Ukraine, and the flow of supplies was much more complicated by not joining Schengen. And we have made a complete mess. And we have also shown the true nature of the Nehammer government, which is very much depending on this populistic support of Orban. And that was a big, big mistake. And it is a very, very big mistake. And I'm protesting it intensively. And Orban's activities, I heard that Slovenia is strictly against urbanization. Very good. Don't do that. We have to cancel the Rosatom project in Hungary. We have to freeze all the EU funding for Orban. This is very important to cut the supplies of money to Orban from Russia via ending all the energy supplies towards Hungary. Yes, of course, we should also have a clear yes to Schengen for Romania and Bulgaria. Then we come to the question of the 2024 European elections. I'm calling for all 9 countries to be allowed and encouraged to organize EU observer elections. That's what we did also partly in Austria in '95 when we joined. And you can do that. And they will learn and train, and we should basically give them an assisted observer membership towards the European Union, already financially participating, economically participating with the euro, with the labor market, with the customs union, with political integration, but only on an observer basis. So that would be very possible for the NATO members at least, but all countries should organize observer elections, at least to have a political elite which really knows what to do. And the EU should stop to organize separate Western Balkans and Ukraine summits, because that's utterly ridiculous. I'm so annoyed about that. We do one summit with Ukraine and one with the Western Balkans, and nobody meets each other. And of course, we should have one summit of the European Union and of the countries of the Western Balkans and Georgia, Moldova and Ukraine. As you have seen now, we lose the battle for Moldova now because the EU is doing all this negative whatever, delaying. And I was in Moldova in June, and they were so complaining that the EU is not doing enough. And now we have the counter-strike of Russia in Moldova. Yes, we are ahead of, it's now the 1st of March, and on the 16th of March, we have the European Commemoration Day for the Mariupol genocide. Let's never forget, Mariupol was the city which was rejecting Putin's aggression in May 2014. He has never forgiven nor forgotten them, and he destroyed it on the 16th of March, a very symbolic day for Russia, because it's the day of the Crimean annexation, which basically the lack of Mariupol being liberated for Russia, also being annexed as well, has created the problems where they had to come back. So that's the view of the Russians. So they have then killed 10,000 people as a revenge act in March 2022. And the city is a complete disaster here. This is the theater of Mariupol. I was there, that's my photo. I was there in February 2022 to protest and to call European and NATO support for Mariupol, because it was absolutely clear that we will be losing Mariupol if Russia attacks. I didn't foresee the big push towards Kiev, where Putin has overextended himself, but that he will take revenge on Mariupol was very foreseeable, at least days before everybody knew it. And then he really killed it in that brutality that I also didn't know, but it happened, and it should be living as a European day for the commemoration of the Mariupol genocide, and I call for that, also for the liberation of Mariupol. This is very important. And again, appeasement leads to war, containment leads to peace. So we need to contain hostile Russia, we need to deter them, we need to be under the American NATO nuclear umbrella, we need all to be in NATO. We could have avoided this war as well in 2022 if we had secured Ukraine, free Ukraine, like Western Germany, in NATO, as I proposed, but it was not to be, and now we have this terrible war with its 2 trillion cost or whatever, and it's an absolute disaster which we can pinpoint on Macron and Merkel and Scholz. And this is the German-French disaster axis which has led to this war, because they have rejected Poland and Ukraine in NATO, based on the Western German model as I proposed. Now we face the war, now we have to liberate it, and anyhow we have to change some things in the global governance structure. We have also to kick Russia out of the UN Security Council and invite India instead. And also the EU seat must be, the French must cede their seat to the European Union. This is the most important reforms. Here, I hope that's very interesting for the future of Russia. Some people believe in free, democratic Russia. I stopped this illusion in 2022. I'm now advocating, and I was at this conference in European Parliament, for these 34 countries to be recognized immediately. We should de-recognize Russia. We should work on a scenario, prepare, like in ex-Yugoslavia, ex-Russia. Ex-Russia will have 34 new states. It will be Siberia, Amur, and Yakutia, Sakha, and Dagestan, and Ingria and Karelia and whatever there is, 34. The list is here. This is the map of this cycle of conferences. I have participated in one of them. I have also made a detailed video how to dismantle Russia, how to support it, how to use the Yugoslavian pretext and context and precedent. Precedent is the best word. And they will fall like all empires will fall. And that's very important to prepare for ex-Russia here in ex-Yugoslavia. I say the future is not better. Slovenia works very well, and so will Karelia work very well. And Dagestan, many new countries will come, like Kalmykia. We just have to learn the names. It's a bit of an effort, and we will help them, and they will be all in the OECD, not Russia, but they will be the new countries in Council of Europe, like Russia was once, and it will be also with free trade agreements, with currency stability agreements, with, of course, support for nation building, and this will be a much better world. We will usher in another 30 years of globalization, yes, based on the success and victory of the market economies of the world and of the democracies of the world, and that's very good. We also should include them in the Regional Cooperation Council and in all these important mechanisms. I was just at the CEF, at the Center for Excellence here in Slovenia. That's very important, and I congratulate Slovenia for this active role in regional cooperation. That's my little meme for Twitter. I'm very active on Twitter as well. My strategy for because I'm a big fan of Ronald Reagan, and he liberated us. Thanks a lot, Ronald Reagan, the great skipper. He was amazing. And then we have, he said famously, my strategy for the Cold War, we win, they lose. I copied it. My strategy for the 2023 war, West wins, Russia will lose, Russia will be dismantled, freedom works, Putin kaput. So I think that adds it up very nicely. Schallenberg and his low-level kind of submissive attitude towards Russia is a disaster. And he allowed these 18 MPs from Russia, genocidal guys, to come to Vienna. And he is this big supporter of that. And the contrary is true. We should have Russia out of the OECD, as we have kicked them out of Council of Europe. Their sister organization, the same logic applies. And Kosovo should be in the Council of Europe and in the OECD. And this is the policy Austria should have. And I call Slovenia to support that, as Austria is unfortunately under Schallenberg-Schüssel, and this policy, total disaster with Orban, with the Iranian killers and terrorists, with, of course, the Russians. It's a complete disaster policy, and you cannot be closer in Europe, but Orban. Austria is the second worst country in terms of compliance and complicity with the Russian and Iranian terror regimes, and they are also very, unfortunately, not supportive of Ukraine and anti-Romanian and ultimately anti-EU, because they will not say that. They always say, we are in favor of EU, but not of EU policy. And that's, of course, a big disaster. And it's very much connected with this neutrality myth, with this Austria as a spy hub, as the seat of international organizations, you know, like New York is as well, many countries like Paris. But that doesn't mean that we allow all the spy activities of Russia to happen here. This is the big spy center at the Russian UN embassy with all this, it's the Intel center in reality, Signal Intel, and then all this pro-Russianism in Austria. This is the head of the Austrian parliament, with one of these Wirecard guys who is now in Russia, and a lot of disasters in the Austrian politics, and this all under this. Here I have all this iconic pro-Russianism of the last 23 years. Fischer, the former president, Schüssel are the main figures on the left and the right, but also Kurz, he was basically a puppet of Schüssel to implement all these gas agreements. Yeah. I've already outlined why this is all happening. I went through it. It's this neutralism, the lie, the projectionism of this provincial kind of levels, this virulent anti-Americanism inherited from Hitler and Stalin, anti-capitalism, anti-Semitism, and this hate for Eastern Europeans, which is unfortunately very strong, this competitive kind of anti-Eastern Europeans at our labor market, and this populism of the last 30 years, and of course massive Russian influence buying via the energy sector, and some left-wing nostalgia and some right-wing Putin adulation. Yes, I have this podcast, this video podcast, and all these efforts. Now I don't exaggerate, 2,000 videos online where I outline all these policies. I repeat again, we should work here on NATO and EU membership, and I call for Slovenia and serious Austria to come to work together for integration of Kosovo, Bosnia, Ukraine in NATO, and that there's a lot of things to do to improve together in a strategic partnership with Austria and Slovenia. I hope that we will also overcome the current crisis with this Slovenianization, and I hope that we can achieve all these important aims. I repeat, I have drafted 15 points of an Austrian Atlantic Charter, like Austria to join NATO now, NATO enlargement, Kosovo, Ukraine, Bosnia, Moldova, and the EU, Austrian arms for Ukraine, Austria to join EU training mission, and Austria to boycott Russia, Austria to make really sure we have no energy imports anymore by the end of 2023 from Russia, and then the EU FTAs with USA, Mercosur, African Union, Gulf Cooperation Council, India, Australia. Then, of course, the EU enlargement, Ukraine and Kosovo, preparation of the UK to return by 2029, yes to the NATO nuclear deterrent for Europe, and yes to European nuclear power, and yes to the opening of the Austrian labor market for the EU candidates. Yes to the OECD and WTO for all EU FTA partners, and end of the Russian BRICS. Yes to the euro for all in the European Union, and also yes to EU debt-funded infrastructure for Eastern Europe, very important, including Slovenia, because I'm now going back to Vienna. After this, I have to change 3 times. I have 6.5 hours to go for 400 kilometers. 400 kilometers under modern European technology in the rail should be 2 hours. We are going maybe 2.5, let's say, under Austrian conditions, not French conditions, but we need a European railway system, and we need that fast. And we need to reform the UN, seat the French seat in the Security Council to the European Union, the Russian seat to India, and we need to isolate Serbia until Serbia turns west and recognizes Kosovo. And then we need to support the transformation of Russia, best to dismantle Russia. This is very, very important. And this is my concluding remarks. And please, Slovenia, Austria, we need to be much more united in infrastructure terms, in policy terms. Therefore, it's important that Austria joins NATO, ends this neutrality, fulfills, of course, the agreement for protection of the minority of the Slovenians in Koroška, and we can learn so much from Slovenia, but we also have to support Slovenia much more. That's why I came, but I also call Slovenia, support our membership in NATO, support our pro-Western integration, and really let's work together to solve all the issues in Southeastern Europe and Ukraine and in the energy sector and many other issues. But let's do that united, and let's not divide ourselves in issues, but let's celebrate that we have overcome our past, but let's connect us with good infrastructure economically. This would be the better future, and I'm working for that. And please support Western integration of Austria. Please support European Austria, and please don't accept the neutrality Austria, because it's absolutely serving only Russian interests. And that we have to fight. Slava Ukraine, let's win this war, support Kosovo, and let's be more united. And thanks for your attention. I was very happy to be in this beautiful city of Ljubljana. Congratulations what you have achieved, and more to come from Pax Europiana. Bye.